Welcome back to another edition of The Rebel's Edge, where we break down top news of the day as it affects stocks. We also give you fantastic futures and macro minute and a little bit of sports. And today we're giving you some CPI, and I think the numbers may surprise you. Stay tuned for that and more on today's Rebel's Edge. Bang. Welcome. That's Pete Najarian. I'm John Najarian. Not as well lit, perhaps, as I should be, but that'll happen pretty soon. I just closed on an apartment down here in Puerto Rico, one that I was selling, not one that I was buying. And that construction noise you hear over there might be part of the reason. No, I'm kidding. It was a great building. I loved the people and the folks that worked there, but a different opportunity presented itself, Pete.
Yep.
So let's dive into the Rebel's Edge. And we'll kick it off with a little macro minute. And the consumer price index indicated 0.2% increase, which matched expectations, keeping the annual inflation rate at about 2.7. And what I'll tell you is what a lot of folks won't, which is a dozen large grade A eggs. They cost you $4.55 in May. They were $3.76 in June. Well, they're $3.60 now, so that's down $1 per dozen. Price of coffee is a pain point because it's up 14.5% from a year ago. Ground beef is higher than it was. Winners and losers. Gasoline prices, for instance, Pete, are down 9.5% in July versus June. Electronics down 4% and so forth. So overall, I think we're doing okay. How about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That CPI report, now we've got PPI coming out on Thursday. And I'm actually going to be sitting there with Maria Bartiromo kind of going through what those things really look like when that number comes out. So should be pretty interesting. But I think what people are reading through, John, is, hey, maybe we got some rate cuts coming. I think you and I already kind of figured out that September looks like it's not quite a slam dunk, but it's probably getting closer to something like that. We'll see. Time will tell. And as we get closer, plenty of things can happen in between. But certainly everybody's fears about the tariffs and all the rest of that, I think, are starting to sort of fade to some degree at least.
Indeed they are, Pete. Well, let's hit fantastic futures. And I'm going to say fantastic futures are not aluminum like those guys are using over there, but I'm going to say, Pete, they are indeed Ethereum futures, because Ethereum is up through 4,400. So that's what's going on in my world as far as futures.
John, for my fantastic future, I got to go with the VIX, and the VIX is pretty interesting today. It started off the day going down, and it hit all the way down to 1505. We bounced back, got back over 16, and then it actually, reality started to set back in once again, and it started pushing down a little bit further. And now, last I looked, we're sitting right around 1480. So no longer 15s, no longer 16s. Now we're into the 14s, which makes this thing pretty interesting.
Well, let's dive into stocks now, Pete. Let's hit C Limited, SE, because this one having a big move today. Basically, earnings per share fell short of consensus by 12 cents. Revenue was $5.3 billion, which exceeded expectations dramatically, and a significant rise from 3.8 a year ago. So just think of that, Pete. Basically, $1.5 billion more rev than a year ago. So C Limited, one of those stocks that we're paying attention to today, and we think you should too.
Yeah, no doubt about it, John. I mean, it also hit new highs, hit 175 today before kind of pulling back a little bit under huge, I mean, heavy volume early on, already eclipsing what a normal full day would be in the first hour or so. So a lot to be said for that. Obviously, we talk about the earnings, that side of the miss, but as you pointed out, the revenue was absolutely explosive. So that was interesting. Net income, another thing. If you look over it year over year, John, a year ago was 79 million. This year, at this point in time, 414 million. So there's some positives out there, and they talked about the growth that they've got. Is it a little bit stretched? It might be a little bit stretched, but I think there's a good reason why this stock is up 15, 16% today. They're pretty excited about the direction.
Well, I'll tell you about one, Pete, that I'm excited about to the downside, and that's Celanese. CE is the symbol. And yes, we did have unusual activity in it, folks. We had put buying, and they were buying the 45 puts when the stock was up there around 47, Pete. Well, the stock plunged down below 37 today. So, as you might imagine, the right to sell it at 45 is worth at least $8 at 37. Bang! That's a huge winner. That's why you should be a subscriber, by the way, folks.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you, John. And, you go through all the numbers, their earnings, they had a pretty nice beat. You look over at the revenue, another pretty nice beat. So you'd say, well, Pete, why is it down then? Well, it's down because they're given an outlook that's not very appetizing for the people that are expecting this thing to keep on growing, keep on going to the upside, keep on beating. And that's part of the big problem. And we talk about this all the time. You always want to know what the earnings look like, what the revenue looked like. That's all great, but that outlook is so daggone important. And their outlook just was that they're going to be under some pressure for a little while. So we'll see. It certainly is great to see that UOA, though, that hits and tells us, hey, look, some of these numbers might look pretty damn good, but the overall number is not going to look good. And these puts that they're buying, John, they had a pretty nice lift from $1.70 to nearly $8 or something like that. Not so bad.
Yeah, I'd say that dog will hunt, Pete. Not so bad is an underestimation for sure. Yeah. All right, let's talk about AST Space, Pete, because AST Space Mobile, this one had just a spectacular deployment of their satellite technology and secured 8 contracts with the U.S. government. Not so bad. Well, take a look at the stock. And I could have put up an unusual activity, but the poor guy that had the unusual activity, he already cashed out, Pete, because this one just a week ago had a huge move up through 53, 54, and then it fell back. But now, after this successful deployment, they're having another big move. This time it's only to 50 or 51, though.
Yeah, up 14% or thereabouts, John. It's amazing, but this is a great example. It's actually everything is flipped from what we were just talking about with Celanese. So in this case, they struggled, right? They struggled in a big way as far as they missed on their earnings, they missed on their revenue, and you say, well, why is this one making a move to the upside? Because they're giving you that outlook, and the outlook for the second half of 2025 and the revenue of 50 million up to about 75 million. That was something that caught everybody's eye. They're pretty excited about the second half, even though this first half, not as great. The quarter obviously wasn't very good. Some big misses there. And I think it's just proof right there that it really does matter about what does it look like into the future. We want to know what happened, but a big influence is going to be what does it look like we're going to look like from here going to the next quarter or the end of the year or second half or whatever it is. That just shows you how important that really can be.
Absolutely. And it's hugely important, and it's why we pay attention to it, folks. Now let's take a look, Pete, at Hanes Brands, because I had to add it because Gildan makes a run at them, GIL makes a run at them and says, we'll pay 5, as in they'll pay $5 billion, Pete. Hanes Brands pops dramatically on that news. And as they say that they'll pay $5 billion, the stock jumps to $6.75 from just that $4 and whatever 25-cent level, Pete. So this is another big winner for anybody that bought calls on this call in HBI. you're a happy camper today. You're probably buying tonight.
They better be because, it's interesting. You got to go back to April, but you go back to April, you see this UOA, this unusual option activity that we're seeing here that actually goes all the way out to January. Well, John, those calls went from 60 cents to over $2. That's a really nice hit for somebody in a fairly short period of time. $5 billion is the number that we're talking about. That's, pretty amazing number as well. So it's Hanes Brands, it's been around a really long time. It's pretty interesting to see them getting gobbled up, but it is the world that we're in. And it also says a lot for those investment banks that we talk about all the time, John. Deals are happening. IPOs are happening. This is something that we should continue to pound the table on, because that's why I think you look at a Goldman Sachs or a Morgan Stanley or a Citi or Bank of America. These financials are doing pretty damn well. If you've got exposure to the investment banking world, I think that those guys are sitting in the right spot.
All right, folks, one of your favorite sections of the Rebel's Edge, where Pete gets to take over and tell us all about what's going on in the world of sports. So we're going to lead off today with a little video that John Farrow's queued up, and I think you guys will find these questions of John Gruden interesting.
Best route runner of all time.
Jerry Rice.
Best quarterback right now.
Joe Burrow.
Worst stadium to play in.
I hate that new LA stadium. I hate that visitors locker room. What is the name of that?
So fun.
I hate that stadium.
Sleeper team for this year.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to win the Super Bowl.
Ooh, sleeper
Tampa
player
Bay,
for this
Pete.
year.
This guy's name is R.J. Harvey, rookie running back of the Broncos. Sean Payton's going to give it to him about 300 times, fantasy football owners.
That is classic. Is there anybody better than him? I mean, he's so entertaining, John. He goes to all these different schools as well as NFL teams, and he shows up and they give him all this paraphernalia stuff of some sort or another. And he is basically a comedian, but also a guy who's been there, so everybody respects him. And by the way, it looks like he's making some progress on some of the other things off of the field and everything else. But he is the best. He is the very best. All right, John.
I love him.
Let's start it off with a little bit of college football, just for fun. And then we got one NFL thing that we got to talk about again. But college football, the Texas Longhorns, they are the preseason #1 school in the country for the rankings, right? Now, you know where Ohio State sits? They're sitting at #3. So it's interesting that #1 is going up and playing against #3, and they're going up there, John, as an underdog. Texas is an underdog, 2.5 points, and going up to Ohio State. Now, here's why I find that really, really interesting. It shows you all of the cred that they give the crowd and everything, and the shoe and everything that goes into being the fans up there at Ohio State, all of it. But Arch Manning and his crew are going to go up there as underdogs, 2.5-point underdogs. And oh, by the way, the two quarterbacks that play for Ohio State have thrown a grand total of 32 passes in their career. So it's kind of interesting. They don't really know who their quarterback is even yet, because they're dueling it out right now. They're probably both very good, but they don't have a whole lot of experience. And on top of that, John, they lost their top 2 running backs. They also lost a few offensive linemen to the NFL. So Ohio State is stacking them up. But are they going to have it stacked up enough that they can compete against Texas in that kind of a way and actually win? I realize it's a home game and all the rest of it, but I find it really, really interesting that the #1 team in the land in the first game of the year, and these guys are going to have to play second fiddle to Ohio State and get 2.5 points. Seems kind of interesting, right?
Well, I bet our friend Pete Sarkisian is happy about it. He'd love to be the underdog going into Ohio State. I don't think he'd want to be favored, even if they do have, and I think they do, Pete, a better team. And I think it's a better team that's a scoring machine. Now, could those big, road graders, that's what they call linemen in college football, folks, could those big road graders at Ohio State open up some gaping holes in the Texas defense? Maybe. But this ain't the Texas of old, Pete.
No.
The Texas of the last 20 years would have a bunch of quick and not necessarily huge defensive linemen. That's all changed. they're a bunch of thumpers now. And if Ohio State can open up holes in there, more power to them. They deserve it. But that's a lot of ball control. If indeed people believe they can do that, that's why they think they can win, not the crowd, in my opinion. But I think Manning is going to light them up, Pete, because that kid's as good as advertised, and I think he's going to have, I'd say, a very good day. And we both know that when you first start out, it's the defenses that generally have the upper hand. In this case, I'm going to say it's the offense with Texas. And then Ohio State's just going to have to try to keep up. And I'm not saying it's going to be a track meet, but it's a 48 over under, Pete.
A lot of holes in Ohio State, and obviously they can stack them and put them right back in there, and they got another great one, right? But I mean, when you lose guys on the defensive line, the outside linebackers, edge rushers, all those kinds of positions, and you lose two of your starting running backs, and you lose your quarterback who went to the NFL and is probably better than where he got drafted at, I would say. He was a pretty damn good quarterback. So there's a lot of holes to fill. It's going to be interesting. They're going to have wide receivers. That's one thing and that's one position. If you're a freshman, you can probably walk in there and become a pretty damn good wide receiver. So they've got some positions, but boy, they got a lot of holes to fill. All right, John, we've talked about this already, but it continues to move on, and that's why I thought it was worthwhile to hit it again. Jerry Jones. We both love the guy. We think the world of him. I love the fact that he paid, whatever it was, $140 million to buy the Dallas Cowboys and was looked upon as an idiot, and now it's worth $10 billion. So, you know what? I'd like to be that kind of idiot. So I look at what he's been doing over his career, though, as far as how does he actually go about all of the moves and of all the things that he wants to do in the negotiation process that he goes through with these players. And, that's a big deal. And he likes to go directly to the players. He doesn't like to use the agents and all the rest of that. He wants to go to the players. So I find it interesting that this just continues to go on and on and on. And I don't know how late it's going to go, John, but at some point, Micah Parsons is probably going to miss a game or two because of the reasons of not actually being in game shape. You don't want to sign him to a monstrous contract. The first thing you do is put him out there and he gets hurt. So I don't know if this is going the way it should have been going. Maybe this should have been closed up maybe a month ago or so. It didn't. So I guess what I ask you is, he did it with Prescott, did it with CeeDee Lamb, did it with that tight end Ferguson, got a nice big contract. Some of the offensive linemen are looking for big contracts. And when you look at Micah Parsons, John, really good idea about where he's going to probably sign. I would say right now he's going to probably go above Watt just because, they always get a little bit more than the guy before him. And so maybe $44 million a year kind of a contract. That's probably what he's going to get. It's probably going to be a 3 or 4 year, not like a 5 or 6, but a 3 or 4 year deal. It's going to be big money. Whatever it is, it's going to be big money, but it's getting bigger the longer Jerry waits. And that's the thing that kind of concerns me. But if you're Jerry Jones, you're probably thinking, I got pretty much generational wealth for the next 50 generations, so I'm not all that worried about how this is going to happen. But as long as he can do it within the constraints of what they have as far as salary cap, but what the hell do you think he's going to finally get? What's Micah Parsons' contract look like?
I would only disagree with you, Pete, on the length. Because he's 25, I'll say it's going to be a 5 or 6 year, not a 3 year. I might be wrong. And if it is 5 or 6 years, he'll want to renegotiate because 5 or 6 is too long, given the acceleration of these salaries. He'll be looking at, man, I could have been making 52 mil instead of 44. I'm feeling ripped off. But if I'm Jerry, Pete, I trade him. Not because of his attitude. I think he's a great player and a good kid. And I would trade him because I don't want that big hit to my salary cap. And I think I can get an edge rusher, Pete, from somewhere that's pretty damn good. He might not get me the 11 or 12 sacks that Micah does and the, occupy as many people as Micah does. But just as you've said about wide receivers, I think edge rushers are in some cases overrated. I think that you can find a kid out of Ohio State, a kid out of Texas, a kid out of Cal, wherever, that has all those tools and just needs to be in the right formation and given the right opportunity. So I would try to build, just like we said the other day, on a Herschel Walker type deal. I would say, okay, he doesn't want to play here. He wants to be traded. I'll take all offers.
Yeah.
Give them to me now. And somebody will make some stupid trade with Jerry Jones, and he's done it before with the Vikings and probably a couple others, and he'll be sitting pretty for the next decade with the players that he steals from that trade.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't see it happening. But if it does, I think he's going to get the better of the trade. If he decides, you know what, should I really give this guy $45 million a year or for the next, however long, or do I make some sort of trade to get a lot of players, which is something that Dallas still does need. They have holes that they still need to fill. So because of that, I'm not against it. I think the fans would be ticked off because, Micah is, looked upon by so many people, whether it's sports writers or fans, as one of the, if not the best, one of the best defensive players in the game right now. And he's 25 years old. So that's the only thing that kind of holds me back is does Jerry want to do that and have the fans kind of down his neck, especially if he ends up going to like a Pittsburgh or specifically Philadelphia, because that is a possibility. Philadelphia's name, that team keeps coming up when people do mention something about a trade.
Let me throw this out real quick, Pete. The other team in Pennsylvania happens to be the Steelers.
Yeah.
And they're not in Dallas's division, unlike the Eagles. So could you see a situation where you got Aaron Rodgers on the one side of the ball with one of the great new receivers that, is just a man-child, and Micah Parsons, a man-child on defense? Could you see that? And is he a Pittsburgh Steeler kind of player with TJ Watt on the other side?
I was going to say, if you got TJ Watt on the one side and him on the other side, I got to think that makes that defense by far the best defense in football. So, yeah, but can they afford it too? I guess maybe to some degree you kind of can, because you're not paying Aaron all that much money, to be honest with you, relative to what he'd gotten in the past. So yeah, it's an interesting thought. There's no doubt about it. It's an interesting thought. And that is something that people have kicked around. They've kicked around that maybe Aaron would want to, kind of knock on the door of the offices and say, hey, how about we get this guy? But
how about we get him?
Yeah, not so bad.
10X, you'd 10X the Steelers if you did that.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Thank you, John Farrell. Great job this week. Pete and I will be back tomorrow with another edition of The Rebel's Edge. We hope you all join us at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you then.